Hello Earth Science students. We are going to be doing the activity in Unit 1, Lesson 6 today of our erosion lesson. And what you need for this activity is you need a glass baking dish, you need sand, you need a measuring cup or something with a good spout that you can pour your water accurately with, and then you need books. And the books are just to prop up your baking dish to create a slope. So it doesn't matter which books you have, but you just want to be able to create a slope with your baking dish. You also need your student guide. That is where the procedures are listed, so you want to make sure that you either refer to the student guide in your student pages or print it out from the OLS so that you have that with you. So the first thing that you want to do after you have collected all of your materials is number 1 says to fill a large glass baking dish half full of sand. So that is what I'm going to do first. So I have my sand right here, and I am going to put that into my glass baking dish. All right, you want it about halfway full. We just want enough in here so that we can see good lines of erosion and see how this sand is eroding as we add the water. All right, so I'm going to flatten that out. Number 2 says slowly pour water over the sand until the sand is saturated. We want to be careful not to add too much water. If you have pools of standing water, that's too much. You're going to have to let your sand dry out before you do your activity. So let's see if we can slowly add some water. We're going to flatten it out after we add the water so we can kind of mix it in there. So let's add a little bit of water to our sand. And I'm just going to kind of go here in a zigzag motion so that we don't get too much water in here. Because you'll notice if I pour too much at once, it creates a pool of water, but then that begins to seep into the sand. So we just want to get it damp enough so that we'll be able to see our erosion taking place when we do this activity. Alright, what I'm going to do is I've added some water to the top. You can kind of see obviously where I've added water. I'm going to kind of mix this up so that all my sand is kind of moist. And see if I need to add any more. Because the trick is getting it moist here. Not too wet. This seems like a good amount of water because I don't have much dry sand at all. So I'm just going to continue mixing this. Then I'm going to flatten it out so that we can start our activity. Okay. Now I've mixed all my sand. You can see it's moist sand. I don't have a lot of dry sand sitting around, but it's not too wet. So I'm going to flatten this out, and then we'll create our slope. Okay, now I have smoothed out my sand. We want a smooth surface so that we can see these lines of erosion. Now we are going to, it says to take the baking dish outside, create a slope by propping it up with a few books underneath on one side. So the reason that they ask you to do this outside is because it is messy. You can also put a tub underneath one end to catch the water. So we're going to try to do this inside, and I'm going to grab a tub so that we don't have too much of a mess, and then we're going to prop up our dish. So I'm going to try to angle this towards the camera so that you get a really good view of it. So I'm going to put my books here, and I am going to angle my dish towards the camera so that we can get a really good view of this. So let me set this up and grab my tub, and then we'll continue from there. Okay, so instead of a tub, what I found was a second glass baking dish, and I set my first baking dish with the sand in it, and it actually props it up for me as well. All I'm really trying to do here is catch any water or sand that may come out of my baking dish, and so this will serve the purpose of that. So if you have a second glass baking dish and you want to do that, then that is fine. If you don't, that's okay. You can do it outside, or you can put towels, something under there so that it catches anything that may come out of this dish. Alright, so we're ready for number 4. Position the measuring cup over the higher side of the sand. And what we're going to do is number 5, very slowly turn the measuring cup so that only a small, steady stream of water trickles onto the wet sand. We are going to be making some observations. So let's take a look. Before we actually do this, what are we wanting to observe? We're wanting to see where the sand is eroding, how quickly the water is flowing. We also want to see where the sand is transported, where it's moving, where it's deposited, what kind of channels are made by our flowing water, and the shape of the delta at the end of our river. So we will look at all of that. So I want a pretty steady flow here going so that I can make all of these observations. So I wanted to see what it expected of me before I started my stream of water, so I knew how much to do. So I'm going to let this go for a few minutes. And so I'm going to trickling stream of water. So I'm just going to let that continue here. So hopefully you can see my water here. See if I can get that. I'm going to try to make it as continuous as possible. And it's just a slow stream of trickling water. See what happens here. I'm wanting to pour it in the same place. What's happening is it's creating a river, and we want to watch how this sand is being transported and deposited, and hopefully it's going to act like a real river would, so that we can observe how weathered sediments are eroded in the real world. So it's hard to make that flow steady, but just make it as steady as possible and as slow as possible. So what is happening, if you can see all the way to the end of my dish, I think that's a good amount. I'm almost out of water there. So what we can see here, let's observe and see if we can answer some of these questions. You can see as it started, it was slower. As more and more water, as those channels were created, then the water moved a lot faster. So number one asks, where is the sand eroded and how quickly is the water flowing there? So the sand starts to erode. Obviously, it's when my water starts trickling, the sand is going to begin eroding where the water is falling or where it's coming out of. And then as a result, it begins flowing downstream and eroding down the stream. And we saw how it first moved very slowly, but then as it erodes away this channel, the water moves very quickly down that channel that it has made. All right, where is the sand transported and where is it deposited? So where is it moving? So we want to know the word deposit. The word deposit is putting something down. So where has the sand been put down? And maybe if I move this camera just a little bit and we can see that a little better, we can see where did all the sand that was up here, where did it go? Where was it moved to, or where was it deposited? And it moved down the bed here, the river bed, and it's deposited at the end or at the mouth of the river. All right, so let's see what our next question is. And that's how it works in real life too. Our sand is transported down our rivers and it's deposited at the bottom of the river or at the mouth of the river. All right, so what shape is the channel made by the flowing water? So if you take a look at this, what shape do you see that we've created here? And so hopefully you can observe that pretty good. What you should see, and what we kind of see here, is we should see a V-shaped. Let me show you what we should be seeing. As water is transported down our valleys, we should see a V-shaped erosion taking place. As that water is trickling down, it's cutting through the sides and it's making a V-shaped. Now my hand was moving around some, so It does. You can see how it's sloping in at the sides here, and then it's very deep in the middle. So a V-shaped valley is being created. And we can try this again and see if we get a little bit of different results. And then our fourth question was, a river delta is a deposit of sand and soil at the mouth of the river. What shape is the delta at the end of our river? So if you take a look here, I don't want to move that too much. I'm going to try to move my camera up here. If you take a look, what shape is that in? As I added more water, it kind of has distorted the end of our mouth because I have all that water sitting there. But as it was going, you could see it very nicely. And so maybe we can point that out if you go back and watch the video as I'm pouring. It was starting skinny and then it gets wider. Creates a triangle shape. So we should see the delta forming in a triangle or a fan-like shape, like these pictures here. And it was beginning to get wider at the bottom where our water was beginning to settle. And this is more saturated here, and so you should see a shape like these three top pictures beginning to form. All right, then it tells you in your procedures, the last thing that it tells you to do, if I can get back to my procedures, is to repeat the activity, except this time use a kitchen faucet instead of a measuring cup. That's going to increase our flow of water and hopefully, change our results a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish out this water here. We're going to video that. See if we kind of see the same results taking place in another place on our baking dish. I'll just kind of hold this up here. See if you see the V-shaped valleys being formed. As it goes down, you can see the triangular shape it's creating. As that sand erodes away. So that kind of, it makes a nice V-shaped until I get too much water in there. So we can try again with a kitchen faucet and see how that changes our results. But hopefully that gives you a good idea of the results that you should see and a good idea of how erosion works in the real world as water is being transported down our riverbeds and channels. Thank you.